Parents are the best people in the world. And I can tell you this, I didn't raise my kids any better than they raised Elizabeth. I just got a little bit of a better break in life. And her dad asked me, he said, what is it about our case? Why do you stay at our case? Why have you done this? And about all I could say is, well, I have daughters too. But what I thought was, and I can't imagine what it would be like to lose one of them to a problem like this that is so preventable. And so we need to get together, and there don't need to be any more Elizabeth tragedies in Lexington, Kentucky. But it's happening every day. It's getting worse. And we as a community can do something about this. There's so much strength and there's so much pride in this community. But we have to come together and we have to first acknowledge just how deep this problem runs and how destructive it is. And then we have to design creative ways to combat it and to arm our young people with what they need to make good decisions. And then those who fail, we have to have some compassion. These are not just junkies. These are not just addicts. These are human beings that have all of the human potential that any of us have. And we have to help them when they fall. And if we will do those things, we can beat this problem. And so I just would ask you, as you go about your business today, to give this some thought and to find out more about this problem. There's a lot more to be learned about it, and to join this fight. It's a worthy cause. Thank you very much.
Indictments are drug-related on an annual basis?
We, in our work, and we only, of course, prosecute in federal court, so we typically do more complex cases. We don't prosecute, most of the drug cases, we don't prosecute any possession cases. We prosecute trafficking cases. About, last year, I think about 60% of our indictments were drug-related. I can tell you just 5 or 6 years ago, the percentage of our drug cases that were heroin cases would have been 2 or 3%. Last year it was over 20%.
Just to clarify, did you say 50 in the first 5 months were overdose people that went to the hospital, or were these deaths?
No, these were deaths. Over 50 in the first 5 months. And I can tell you that number really doesn't measure how fast this problem is growing, because in the last couple of years, we have Narcan now with our first responders. So we're saving a lot of overdose cases that would have died a couple of years ago. But we've had 50 deaths, I think, in the first 5 months of this year.
So to get a handle on that number, how many overdose victims lead to death?
You mean what's the total number of overdoses?
Oh, yeah.
That's, I don't have that number for you, but it would be probably in the thousands if you look across a broader area in our state. Yes?
I live in the Chevy Chase area. If I chose to get heroin or fentanyl, what do I do?
That's a good question, but if you just ask around, if you ask enough of your friends, probably not this group. if you asked enough of your friends, you would find somebody eventually that would say, well, I know a guy, I can hook you up. Or if you just went to the right places and hung around, you would see somebody that could fix you up there. And for a dose of heroin on the street, it would cost you 20 or 30 bucks.
What can we do about the dealers?
Well, we're doing what we can about the dealers. What we need to do is to detect that they're out there, and we need to arrest them, and we need to take them off the street. But here's the problem. To really make a dent in this, we have to get way above the street level dealers, because these organized gangs that I'm talking about, they have an unlimited supply of street level dealers that they can send down here from Detroit or wherever it might be. We have to be able to work back up the chain and get to the big guys that are really making a lot of money and are selling this in big quantities to really make a dent in the problem. And we're working on that. We're working very closely with the DEA, our DEA counterparts in Detroit, my colleague in Detroit, and others to try to be more collaborative, to exchange intelligence, and to try to put a crimp in this pipeline. Yes, sir.
Don't a lot of users get involved in burglary and theft and other activities? Do you normally catch them through drug use or through these other activities they're engaged in?
Well, there's no question, when you're talking about users, when you're talking about people who are addicted, an opiate addict will order their whole lives around feeding that addiction. And really, once they're addicted, it's not a choice. It changes the brain chemistry. And the brain tells them the first thing and the last thing you have to do today is you have to get a fix. And so much of the property crime that we see is related to drug use one way or the other. I talk to law enforcement officers all over this end of the state, and most of them will tell you that something like 85% of all crime in their jurisdiction is related to drugs in one way or the other. That's property crime, violent crime, whatever the case may be, theft. Yes, sir.
Is marijuana just passe now?
Well, it's not passe. It's pretty popular in some areas, but marijuana presents a very complex federal drug enforcement problem, because now we have some states that on the state level, as you know, have made it legal. So it's difficult to sort of understand how we should enforce the federal marijuana laws in that environment. I will tell you this, I'm certainly not an advocate of marijuana. I think that it's a very dangerous gateway drug, but in the scheme of things, in the scheme of our resources, we need to use our limited resources. I have 44 assistant U.S. attorneys that I have available to prosecute federal crime in 67 counties, so that's not a lot. And we try to focus on drugs like heroin and fentanyl and the drugs that kill people.
I've heard a lot of conversations about tightening border controls. Would you see that to be a benefit in stemming the high-end trade?
There's no question that we need to do everything we can do to stem the flow of heroin and fentanyl across the border, particularly the Mexican border. There's no doubt about that. I know that there is increasing pressure being placed on the Mexican government to assist in that. And so, yeah, the answer is we need to get better control of that. The caveat is that that's it's sort of like water. It's going to find a way, and it's very the idea that we will ever reduce that flow to zero. It's just that's not going to happen unless we reduce the demand to zero.
Yeah. What kind of strategies can you use to stop the crime school effect of everyone you put into jail or prison learns how to be in drug connections and drug dealing connections? And the bigger drug dealers seem to come from prison. Everybody you put in, there's a more experienced drug addict, drug dealer coming out.
Well, that's again, we could have an all-day session about that. That's a very difficult problem. One of the things we have to do is we have to be able to distinguish between addicts who really are enslaved to their addiction and drug traffickers who are simply cold-blooded predators and who are in it for the money. And those are the people that we're dealing with. The addicts need to be treated with a large measure of compassion, and we need to make effective treatment available for those folks because they're suffering from a disease. The drug traffickers who are in it for the money need to be treated as the criminals that they are, and they need to be punished in such a way that others will be deterred. Beyond that, I don't have a magic answer for the recidivism problem. Again, that's a very complex issue.
How many traffickers are addicts?
That, you know, I think there's a bit of a myth there. I hear a lot that, oh, well, most of the heroin dealers are just trying to support their own addiction. At least among the people that we prosecute, that's pretty rare because addicts don't make very good business people. They tend to use more of their product than they sell. And it tends to, you know, it can happen. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but far and away, the biggest number of heroin traffickers that we prosecute don't use their product. They're in it for the money. They don't care what happens to the people they sell it to. We're just a very quick example. We're prosecuting a fellow who was selling big quantities of pure fentanyl, which was pressed to look like pain pills. These were being sold as pain pills, when in actuality it was pure fentanyl, which is just a death sentence. He was a wholesaler. The street level people that he was selling to, he said, don't sell these to anybody that you love because it'll kill them. So those are the kind of people that we're prosecuting. Thank you all.
Terry, thank you for coming today. We have a little stuff around for you. Please join me again in thanking Carrie for sharing such wonderful information.